really good living just shooting the beginners too, and then selling them photos.
I did that at first.
You could do
Honestly,
really well.
I didn't really like it very. I
It's
just couldn't
boring.
be real. It was. I mean, it was cute. I'm a mom and a grandma.
Yeah.
It was cute to see little kids out on waves, but at the end of the day, that you can only be so creative. Parents want to see that, like you said, that crop specific photo showing their kid shining on that wave, and that just I did it just again to earn street cred, to have the practice. I just wanted to get that experience, and I'm glad that I did it. Locals, Surf School, Kook Mike Reinhardt, they were actually really great. They, hey, we have a client that's going to come out and surf, and they want to have photos of their lessons. You interested? We'll pay you and do that. Yeah.
That's
and
awesome.
So it wasn't like my favorite thing to do, but it was necessary.
Yeah.
And I really appreciate them. They helped me. Kook is actually he's one of my mentors for sure.
Oh, he's the best.
He's
such a sweetie.
He is.
Both of them are.
They really are. I don't see Reinhardt as much.
Yeah.
But Kook is always really great. And I remember one time when I was shooting him and he kept yelling, and he was really far out, and it might have been Dorian. I don't know. It was one of the really great hurricane swells. And he just kept saying something. He came out and he's like, angle. Remember what I told you? Shoot some angles out there too, not just straight ahead.
Yeah.
And I was like, all right. And I'm like, angles. And then I started playing with the jetties.
Right.
And playing with the angles.
Shooting into the wave a bit more.
Exactly. And once I started and really analyzing my photos not just posting because hey, everybody, look what I just went out and did, and look who's out there. That's fun. But really paying attention. And, I do appreciate Kook helping me with that, because he was really great about explaining you could do even more with this. So.
What's that journey been like learning surfing? Like everything from the vernacular to the culture, I imagine it's interesting because you don't surf, but you've embarked on this kind of surf journey, and it's always an interesting culture. It can be quite closed off in some ways, or closed-minded. It can be kind of, there can be some real arrogant people to deal with also, or cliquey and all of that sort of stuff. So what's that kind of been like, and what have you done to kind of learn about it all?
Well, one thing, just paying attention to everything, like I do. And even when they're out talking, even when there are maybe, somebody drops in and you hear, I really pay attention to all of those things. Okay, at first I was like, drop in, what the hell does that mean? And then you'd see the shirts and everything. I'm like, all right, I got to learn drop in. What is that? So, I was starting from the very basics.
Yeah.
But I think that was good because it just pushed me to just devour everything I could. And so I really, in shooting them, I'm really analyzing them. It's like homework. I'm really paying attention to their conversations. When they're talking to me, Simca is a teenage surfer who is incredible. And she's one of the first people that I shot that actually just totally ripped, did all these crazy tricks. And that was kind of cool. That was different. And so, she would teach me things too. Here's this, at the time, I guess she was 14. She's 17 now. And she would teach me different things. She's like, Riley, do you know about the tides? Do you know about... And she would just actually go out there with me before she'd go out. We'd have an hour lesson.
Wow.
And she would explain the tides and the waves, and this is the reason the waves are, offshore today. So that's why I'm at this break. But if they were like this, all of the surfers have been really giving in that way. So it's just been homework. And I'm trying to segue into something a little bit different, totally out of my comfort zone. And, you have to grow as a creative. You can't stay static.
Yeah.
But it's scary, coming here and doing this. It's scary, but you have to do it. And then once I shoot something, and then I'm like, oh. So I kind of take what I've learned and what I'm still learning and going to continue learning. I take that, and then I step up and do the next level. And so then as I learn more, then there'll be a new evolution, down the road. I feel like you have to do that.
Did you study any surf photographers or start looking at certain people? And were there any who you looked at as an influence?
Well, first of all, my favorite, Bill gives me so much shit for it, but I constantly am like, well, Burkhardt doesn't do that. And Chris Burkhardt.
Chris Burkhardt's amazing,
I love him. And, I've watched if he has a class, because he'll do courses every now and then, if he has it, you better believe I've purchased that and I've watched it like 1,000 times. And he'll come in and be like, I can hear Burkhardt as I'm walking upstairs. Didn't you already take that?
Bill, don't worry. He's short. He's got nothing on you, okay?
But I just love him.
Yeah. He's never home.
He's never home, ever. But I love, I have to say he's probably my biggest inspiration just because he started with going out in the water, knowing nothing, and just going out there, earning his street cred.
Yeah.
And, just doing stupid stuff, which I've done stupid stuff, and just doing all of these things so that the surfers are like, all right, he's legit. He's out here. He's trying, like, all right. And, working with him, and the surfers have done that with me. And so I just love, in the landscape, the outdoor, it's not just surf photography. Talk about the stories in his photos.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, I was just going to say, now that you mention it, like I see, because he does this whole peripheral shots, like the surfer's just part of a much larger context.
Absolutely.
And, I can see that influence, in your work then.
Ooh,
Oh,
I like that. Yeah, he's my biggest influence for sure. Like anything he does, I'm right on it. I've actually messaged him during COVID.
Nice.
And when it first started, I have the photos I took of surfers out, and then like the next day I was like, that's it. Everything's shut down. Don't go on the beach. Don't surf. Kind of like Footloose with no dancing, right? I was like, that's it. And so then the surfers, I could tell, like I went out a couple of times. They're looking at me. I'm looking. It's like, what do we do?
Is this okay?
Right? It was just weird. And so a couple of times I went out and shot, and a couple of people did say, like, how can you do that? Like, people are dying. You're out shooting surf. Like, it was this whole weird thing. And I try really hard not to get political, not to get in that you never know someone's story, ever.
Yeah.
I'm not going to do that. But I messaged Burkhardt, and I said, hey, what I did was I messaged him on his latest post and said, love this, it's great, whatever. Hey, also, I just messaged you. Don't know if you'll answer, but I really need your help. It's about surf photography in New York. And within like 30 minutes, he messaged me.
No way.
He did. I mean, I kept that thing. It's awesome. And I just said, what do I do? And I said, I want the ocean and the surf, like, it's important. We're outside. I feel like it's safe. It feels very safe. We're all keeping our distance. We're usually hugging, and none of us are doing that. Like, I feel like it's safe. Like, I want to shoot. I want to be respectful. Like, what do I do? And he said, it's a dance. It's a fine line. And he said, you have to do what's right for you. And just think about that, but just know. And he said, most things that you're going to be doing are like that. Like, it's a fine line. It's that dance.
Yeah, I mean, he shoots with bears and stuff,
I know, right?
like.
Exactly. He knows about the fine line.
But I mean, that time was very interesting because it was like, I shied from surfing for like a good month and a half because I was concerned. I was like, one, I didn't know what was it was all very new. Two, I felt like I don't want to get injured and end up in the hospital.
That was the big thing.
That was for me, and I'm clumsy, so I'm like, something is most likely going to happen. But then what I ended up doing is going surfing, like mostly alone at less than stellar breaks, but just by myself, that I felt like comfortable doing it. But it was a touch and go for like a good month and a half. And I missed some really good swell, which now I regret, Right. I'm like, damn, if I know now, if I knew then what I know now. But, it's really, I mean, I think what you were doing was fine. And I think it was great to document that. And now, I know one of your projects you're working on is Rear Window, Life in the Time of Coronavirus. And I was hoping you can discuss a little bit about that, like what that is and what that project is going to look like. I've seen some photos of it.
Well, it was during that time, and when I was struggling with, like, that was the heart of learning, and I couldn't imagine, I guess, just how the surfers can't imagine not being in the water, not going out, even if there are no waves, just going out. It's the same for me.
Yeah.
Like, I just couldn't imagine. And so I started thinking about it, and I posted a set of photos where there were a couple of surf, it's really far away, but then there were there was a family that went out to the jetty and had flowers. Obviously, someone had died, and they stood out there. And like I have one really great long lens. I made sure to use that to have total respect, and I kept my distance from them. But I shot that, and just watching that was like really powerful. And so I shot that, and that was one of the photos of them. Everyone had different kind of flower, and they're throwing it into the ocean. And so I had these different photos, and I made a point of saying, these were either shot from a very far distance, or a lot of them were shot from my balcony or my car window.
Yeah.
And so people started messaging me privately. They messaged me on the photos, but started messaging me and saying, like, I haven't been out of my house in 3 months, and when I saw this, I started crying.
Yeah.
And I was like, wow, okay. And Bill's like, what? What the heck? And then, it just blew up. And people started saying, like, this is like, you're giving me like food and I'm starving. Like, please keep doing this series. And so I shot it for like a year, and just all these random things that I would know when people first started wearing masks. And one surfer, I remember he was the first surfer I saw with the mask.
Surfing with it on?
Right. Yeah.
I saw a few people.
Right?
Yeah.
And I was like, whoa, that's so weird.
Yeah.
But I photographed that. I wanted that memory because, like, wow, will we ever even see this again? Like, someday somebody might in school, like, be looking like, this is what it was like in New York. And,
well, you look at like Spanish flu photos, right?
Exactly.
Like, and you see that and you're like, oh, yeah.
Right.
There'll be some really interesting historical context to it for sure.
Absolutely. So that helped me. Really, it was followers, followers of surf, of Rockaway, of New York, those people who have been following my photography. They just would reach out and say what it meant to them. Some of those people lived in, small spaces. They couldn't get out, or had an elderly person that, they had to protect. They couldn't do things like that. And they were like, please keep posting. These are they're helping me so much. So I'm eventually trying to put that series together and put that in some kind of book form, I feel like, and maybe have like some stories to go along with that, with the photos too. So that's one thing that I've been working on. And also like BSA with the paddle out.
Yeah.
That was
all around the same time.
Amazing, amazing experience. And, documenting that was, I don't know, that was surreal.
It's profound.
It really was. It's very emotional.
It, to me, marks a really, you can pinpoint, like, you see a change in surf community in Rockaway, I think. Yeah. You just see more people of color out in the lineup. Absolutely. After it. You've seen more encouragement of it, and I feel like a bit more of the community for sure, like really solidifying around that, and really helped, with the solidarity.
I agree with that. The diversity especially. I posted photos a few weeks ago, and someone was like, oh my God, the diversity in this set. This is amazing. He's like, that's what Rockaway looks like right now? I'm like, yeah, you need to get back out here. This is what it looks like. How amazing is that? It wasn't like that in the very beginning.
No. Gosh, when I was a kid coming out here, or just growing up surfing in New York in general, not like that even till the last few years, and it's wonderful to see. And I think we're quite, I talk about this on the show a lot, I think New York is very unique in that regard, and there's not many other places around the world that have that sort of diversity in the lineup. So I think
agree with
it's
that.
something to be really, really encouraged by, for sure.
Yeah, absolutely.
You talked about the surf photography, being healing. I was hoping, I don't know if you're comfortable discussing it, but what that entailed, or you don't have to if you're not comfortable.
Well, it was something that happened to me when I was a teenager.
Mm-hmm.
It was during a teen pregnancy. That's why I was high school dropout, and I was forced to give away my child.
Oh, that's really, don't worry. That's really difficult.
And so he came back into my life. He found me. I'd been looking for him for 30 years.
That's incredible.
And he found me. And so it's one of those things, like, I connected with the therapist after a while because I'm like, first thing I said to her was like, this is what I've wanted for 30 years. Why don't I feel happy? Why is this not a positive thing? And she said, because it was trauma.